To all my Warhammer 40k fans, if you're looking for your next obsession, I might have found it. Last week we talked about two of my favorite books that I've read lately and how I wanted to bring the Aeronautica onto the tabletop and see if I could figure out how to do that. Well, I think I found the next best thing, and that is Frontiers Reach. It's a starship-based war game that is a lot of fun to play, and you do get to see a lot of combat and do a lot of really, really fun things to really bring the feel of the Aeronautica into your life when there's not a tabletop version or an official Warhammer 40k version. It's a lot of fun to actually get to sit down and play video games. As I've talked about a few times before in the past, I don't get to do that very often right now because of running this YouTube channel, my life as a professional author, and my day job in cybersecurity. It's a lot of extra stuff that's extra taxing and takes up most of my time. But when the developers of Frontier Reach actually reached out to me and asked if I wanted to demo their game and preview it on social media, I had to jump at the chance. It was an opportunity that I just couldn't pass up, and I'm glad I did. The game is super fun, and it really brought out a lot of my passions and things I loved to do growing up as a kid, with a lot of the flight simulators and airfighter games that I used to play growing up, and this is the next level. It's one that I really enjoy, and I definitely recommend checking out on Steam if you have a chance. Since all of you guys are big into the lore, and that's part of the reason you're here for the channel, I thought diving into the actual lore of the game may be a lot of fun for us to learn about what's going on in the game and why it's so important. And like I said, the developers did not skimp on this either. They have a lot of lore in it for a pretty combat-heavy game, and when they invited me to participate, they actually sent out a folder with a bunch of stories in it as well that are a lot of fun. And I'm not going to actually read any of those stories to you guys yet because I have a feeling they're working on tying those into the games. I've only been able to play the game for a few hours, but it's definitely becoming one of my new obsessions really fast. So let's dive into the lore and talk about what Frontiers Reach is and why it's so cool.
Warning. Incoming. First wave of ice down. All hostile ships are down.
So Frontiers Reach embraces the grim and gritty Grimdark, very similar to how Warhammer 40k does it, but They do it in a little bit different route. In this game, you're in the year 2230, and you're a lot closer to current human civilization than you are to the year 40,000, but you still get a lot of that grimdark build to society. You see the first levels of AI going rogue and doing their own things. But on top of that, humankind is fractured. They've expanded throughout the galaxy, but a lot of the frontier colonies have begun to break away and push up against the strong-arm tactics of the Sol system. And this has led to a lot of the strife that we're actually getting to see in the games. This really sets the stage for a really cool retro-futuristic narrative that ties a lot of the Cold War feel into the game and gives it its very unique aesthetic that's a lot of fun. If you enjoy games like Fallout, but you want to be in Starfighters instead, this game is for you. You're going to get a lot of that retro feel from games like Fallout, but you're going to be seeing it in star bases on the frontier. Kind of like you get in the TV show Firefly. It's still one of my favorite TV shows, even though it only got gypped into a season. But that aesthetic is really, really cool, and you can tell that it inspired the developers to build this entire world and universe. My favorite part of this embrace of frontier ideology and the Wild West feel during a Cold War is the fact that the developer was inspired by a lot of his family history, just like I was for my Roots of Conviction series. He is part Cherokee and part Choctaw, which leads him to really be inspired by that point in history. And he pulls in a lot of that family flair into this game as well. So if that's something that really intrigues you, I'd definitely go check it out on Steam. Like I said, I can't recommend it enough. It's one of my new obsessions. And it's amazing how much a small team did to build this amazing game. This small game development team is working their tails off to bring incredible games. You already have Frontier Reach out, and you have 2 other games that are about to be released or in process, and I've had the opportunity to preview those as well. And I am super excited for this entire series and experience that we're going to enjoy throughout all of this. But now we've got a little bit of the background of what this universe looks like, and we have the stage set. Let's talk about the 2 key players in this game, as well as potentially a third.
Welcome to the frontier, pilot. The golden age of exploration is over. The war for the frontier has begun. Understand our goal is not to fight in this war. Rather, we would flee it. To seek a new home among the uncharted worlds of the galaxy. But make no mistake, we will have to fight our way through it. Will you help us unite those who are willing to chance a new life on a new world? Or will you succumb to the throes of war and lead our people into the fires of tribulation? The choice is yours, pilot. Which one will you make?
So as this game breaks out, you're playing Anya Zuman, the captain of a small freighter who's transporting refugees and explorers to a new unexplored territory. And this mission starts as tensions are escalating between the Frontier Republic and the Sol Confederacy. Despite being tilted to one side a little bit towards the Frontier Republics, you do get your choices. It's one of my favorite parts of this game is it very much depends on what you do and how you choose to act to dictate what's going to happen in the story. But to really understand this game, we need to understand exactly who these factions are and what they want. So let's start with the Frontier Republics. The Frontier Republics are a faction that reminded me a lot of America during its revolutionary period. They're a nascent group of nations and countries and planets that have come together to try and form a push for independence. They want to be free of the bonds of corruption that has become the Sol Confederacy and push out on their own. But their supply lines are very thin, their resources aren't as good because they're not as established, and their manpower is very low. So they're forced to fight and survive on the edge of victory or destruction in almost everything they do. It's a very tense situation for them, but the upside is so great that it's worth it, and they're willing to push for it and fight for it. There's a lot of really cool units that get put out to the front lines and have to fight on their own and win despite the odds, while the Sol Confederacy can just throw manpower at the problem. A few of these units have some pretty cool stories attached to them that you need to be watching out for. One of the ones that really stood out to me is a story called Aether's Angels. It's a really cool story about some ground troops that you as the captain actually come in and rescue at the last possible minute, saving them from being surrounded and cut off. And it's a really, really epic story. I haven't gotten to that part in the game, so I don't know if the actual kind of short story they have written for it is directly reflected in the game, or if it's just a tangential story that you get to see pop up in lore and backstory. But that little 2-page story was extremely good and extremely powerful. It actually got me really excited to look back into some of the short fiction I have and see if there's any cool things I could do game-wise. It also could potentially lead to some really cool narrative campaigns on the 40K tabletop that would be a great way to bring in more than 2 players into that narrative game and maybe allow for another faction to step in and save them at the last possible minute when they're surrounded. The other story that stood out to me from the list of stories that they provided me was a story called Ardent Maiden. The Ardent Maiden is actually a stealth ship that comes to rescue a bunch of the Republic fleet that is in a lot of trouble and is on their last legs as well. And the Ardent Maiden shows up in a full stealth attack and manages to rescue their friends and colleagues. From what I've seen on the Discord, a lot of the players do enjoy playing the Republic, and it's the main focus that a lot of the players and the game developers have taken because people do enjoy it so much. That living on the edge and fighting for your freedom is something that especially us as Americans are very excited about and excited to do in video games and in our lives. So having that feature tied with really cool aircraft and spacecraft and combat makes it for a really fun game. And like I said, I've only been able to play it for 3 hours or so, but it's quickly becoming one of my go-tos when I have some free time. So next, let's talk about the quasi-bad guys in these stories. I say quasi because this is also Grimdark, so there's not really a good guy. There's just the less bad guys. So the badder bad guys in the story are the Sol Confederacy. As we talked about, they are famous for their corruption and for everything that is driving them purely based on greed and power. They represent the old guard of society that strives for their own power and their own wants, often sacrificing those beneath them. And this is a theme we see a lot in Warhammer 40K, which I think is why it stuck out to me so much. And it really does remind me of the Imperium and how they're willing to just throw men at the problem. There's an entire Imperium faction based on that. But on top of that, they do employ a very centralized command structure, are very successful at what they do across the board when they don't get in their own way. And luckily for the Republic so far, getting in their own way is basically all they've done. Like I said, with the Republic, this is very similar to the American Revolution and some of the things we saw with the British getting in their own way. On top of that, throughout the story, you get to play somewhat of a similar role to John Paul Jones and his role in the American Revolution, which attacked the British from behind, forcing them to turn and fight there, relieving the pressure on the rest of the American fleet and on the Americans fighting in the United States. Finally, there's a third faction that are sometimes referred to under the pseudonym of Kronos or other different groups like this. This is the AI. They are actively seeking to separate themselves from the humans as well, and causing a second rift in this faction that is very unstable. But we don't know a lot about any of the AI branches right now. You may find out more in the game. Like I said, not very far in. I'm also not very good at it yet, which is why it's taking me as long as it has. But I'm curious to see where this AI faction goes and what they do. And this may not be a question for Frontier Reach. It may be a question for later games. But it's a really cool concept that could yield a lot of really fun stuff in the game as well. Now, finally, we have the two new games that are on their way that I'm super excited about. First is Battle Spaces, which is basically just Frontier Reach 2, and you have Mercenaries, getting to explore on the ground and see a lot more. Maybe the way to fill in a lot of lore gaps that we haven't been able to do yet. So,
welcome to the battle space, Commander. As the captain of one of thousands of vessels answering the call, we have high expectations of you and your crew. Your mission is to proceed to the moon Frontier's Reach.
Captain, we have arrived at Frontier's Reach.
Once there, you will provide assistance to friendly forces fighting back the Sol Confederacy. Whether you're sending fighters on assignment, delivering fire support for troops on the ground, or distributing logistics to those in need, your efforts are paramount in winning this war. For every action you complete, you'll be paid a bounty. As you earn doubloons, you can upgrade your vessel. Keep in mind, though, some upgrades will require unique infrastructure, which will only be available around certain planets.
Where would you like to go, Captain? Location locked in, Captain. Beginning sprint sequence.
Each planet is liberated and secured through the progression of war momentum. Secure a planet, and the battle space commander on the ground will help you get to the next one.
We have arrived, Captain.
Electronic warfare systems are online.
Confirming sight. Alpha wing launch.
Securing the worlds of the frontier is the only way we're going to win this war, Commander. Best of luck, and may the gods treat you in their favor.
but with all this said, I love the world. I think it's amazing. It's inspired me a lot with some story writing I've done. I've actually made some changes to the manuscript I'm working on right now on a very tight deadline to reflect some of the inspiration I got from these stories. I didn't obviously steal anything, but a lot of little storylines and plot points like to spark ideas for me. And it was very cool to see how a video game can affect me. It's something that I haven't really realized as an author. Normally, video games pull me away from my stories, but this one didn't, and it was amazing and an absolute recommendation. And I can't thank Frontier Reach enough for reaching out to me and sponsoring this, giving me a free copy of the game to really break in and enjoy it. And a lot of the pictures I've included in artwork are ones that were provided to me in the press kits, because most of my gameplay videos might have been me crashing and not succeeding a lot. It's still taking me a lot of getting used to, but it is a lot of fun, and I would absolutely recommend checking it out on Steam as well. If you've enjoyed this different content on this channel, let me know by giving me a like and maybe commenting any other games or game developers you'd like me to work with in the future. This could be a lot of fun. Or if you have any other suggestions or ideas for 40K videos or other wargaming videos that you want to see, let me know in the comments below as well. And finally, don't forget to subscribe. We have a lot of really cool stuff coming. We'll be getting back to some of the more normal stuff that we do next week with another lore-accurate video. After that, we'll keep going with some really cool other Warhammer 40K related videos, as well as some other wargaming stuff that I have slated as well.